Certainly with the group scheme, you'll get a lot of variance in the work that you do because you work for so many different employers. You might work in the manufacturing industry, you might work in the building side of things, or you might work just doing houses. So you do get a lot of variance there. Positives and negatives of both. Certainly with the group scheme, it is a positive. You do get to view a lot of different industries. You might work on a building site, you might work on a domestic house, you might work in the manufacturing industry doing some maintenance work. So you do get to see the whole gamut or the variation of the electrical industry.
Most of the power industry contractors direct employ, but our largest contractor, which is 10X, do use a group training apprenticeship system.
Group schemes have been around for over a decade, and essentially a group scheme is where an apprentice is put out to host employers for a period of time.
What will happen is they'll get hired out to one company to do a particular task and another company. So there might be times when they miss gaps and parts, but there is things in place to sort of help that along.
My apprenticeship was with group training. I had a large exposure to a lot of different companies, small and large, on how to do things. So I found it quite helpful doing the group training. I feel for a lot of the apprentices who have only had the one company, often they've only done very similar tasks. They're not so well prepared, I've found. I'm actually a big fan of group training.
One of the biggest problems with group training apprentices is being unplaced or on downtime.
Occasionally, and unfortunately due to the industry, if you're an apprentice to the group scheme, sometimes there's downtime. If there's a downturn in the industry, you might find yourself without work for a short time during your 4 years.
Ideally, we'd like long-term placements for group training apprentices, but it's not always the case. Sometimes an apprentice, if he or she's lucky enough, they'll end up on a site for a few months. But in many cases, some apprentices may only spend a few days. As a union, we've tried time and time again to incorporate in EBA's minimum term placements, ideally 6 months or 3 months. However, group training companies just couldn't really operate in that fashion.
When it comes to domestic companies versus construction versus group training, regardless of who your apprenticeship is with, you need proper exposure. And if you're not getting proper exposure to the industry, I mean electrical exposure, you're not going to be as good an A-grader who's had the correct exposure.
So, whilst you do get a bit of variation working and interacting with other people in different industries, the union's preferred method is direct hire.